Geoffrey Crellin and Victor Neal, who are now in charge of Manx Radio, knew perfectly well that they faced an uphill struggle. The station was barely profitable, and it could never become a great financial success until it was allowed to operate on higher power, reach a wider audience, and attract more advertising revenue. Somehow or other, means had to be found to turn up the wick, which became Neal's often repeated stock phrase. However, there was hope. In June 1970, a general election took place in the UK, and Wilson's Labour administration was defeated by the Conservatives under Edward Heath. Unlike Labour, the Conservatives favoured the establishment of commercial radio in the UK, and it was hoped that they would look more favourably on Manx Radio's requests for increased power. The new Minister of Posts, as he was called, was Christopher Chataway, and Victor Neal hoped to persuade him to nominate Manx Radio as the regional station for the northwest of England. Although this would involve giving up hopes of broadcasting to the whole of Britain, it would at least mean that Manx Radio would reach to the parts of England on which it had for many years depended for its tourist trade. However, Neal's talks with Chataway were entirely unproductive because it was not in the Tory government's interests for Manx Radio to siphon off revenues that might accrue to English commercial radio companies. So permission for more transmission power was refused. Faced with this, Crellin and Neal began to think more in terms of turning up the wick anyway, and making use of the fact that Manx Radio was in theory a Crown agent, because it was owned by Tynwald. Unfortunately, the Attorney-General had been ill for a considerable time, and the very complicated legal work necessary to transfer all aspects of ownership to Tynwald remained to be done. Moreover, there was also the fact that if the power were to be increased from the existing 1 kilowatt to even 10 kilowatts, expensive new transmitters would need to be bought and installed, and the station had no money in hand for this. And then in the winter of 1970, another crisis arose. The owner of the broadcasting house premises, Captain Goldie Taubman, had been tragically killed in a fire at his home, and his heir wanted to sell the property rather than lease it to Manx Radio. Crellin and Neal decided that without question they must buy the property, but this involved raising the money through a grant of Tynwald. Eventually they were able to negotiate a price of £9,000, which Tynwald authorised in April 1971. They then argued forcibly that it was necessary to install a new transmitter capable of a stronger output and to construct a new studio, and Tynwald voted a further £23,000 for these purposes. A transistorised transmitter manufactured by RCA in America was duly installed, and morale at Manx Radio reached a new high with the expectation that it would soon be fully in action. Moreover, because the Tory government had given the green light to the setting up of commercial radio stations in the UK, Manx Radio, as the only existing commercial station in the British Isles, became of great interest to companies hoping to set up their own stations, and many visited Broadcasting House to see how things were done there. When the new transmitter was installed, Neal's plan was to test it on full power, that's 10 kilowatts, in October without permission from the post office, but unfortunately the transmitter developed a fault which was not easy to locate. It failed to work properly on the appointed test day, and as a result of the delay, the post office got wind of what was going on and warned the governor that any transmission above 2 kilowatts would be a breach of the station's licence. In November there was a general election for a new House of Keys, and as a result of the redistribution of responsibilities which took place, Geoffrey Crellin was moved from the Broadcasting Commission to the Finance Board, and Bill Quayle, MHK, was elected by Tynwald to be chairman of the Broadcasting Commission in his place, with Victor Neal remaining as vice-chairman. Crellin also ceased to be a member of the Management Committee, though Neal continued as chairman. Bill Quayle, the new chairman of the Commission, had been a director of Manx Radio in earlier years and also a keen supporter of Radio Caroline, so he was no particular admirer of the Post Office. He and Victor Neal decided that despite the Post Office's warning, they would broadcast on full power without permission and wait to see what happened. An RCA engineer was brought over from Canada to fix the fault on the transmitter, and on January the 20th, 1972, without any announcement, Manx Radio turned up the wick and broadcast at 10 kilowatts, sending its programmes beaming loud and clear far inside the UK. They got away with it for 8 days, during which period the BBC complained to the Post Office complained to the Home Office, and the Home Office complained to the Governor, and the Governor on January the 28th instructed Manx Radio to return to 2 kilowatts forthwith, or else, as the Attorney General had to point out, Quayle and Neil and their colleagues might all find themselves in Douglas Jail.